Caribbean green seasoning. And what I mean by a small batch is I was on a call recently, a sort of a preview call to a podcast that I'm going to be appearing on. And one of the recipes we spoke about doing was chicken pilau. And part of seasoning that chicken includes Caribbean green seasoning, as with so many of our dishes. And you know, throughout the Caribbean, we have a version of Caribbean green seasoning. And over the years, I've shared several recipes, but they were all huge amounts, which means, because I use it on a daily basis, but as in this case here, and I suppose a lot of people will have the same sort of problem in making a huge batch. What do you do with it if you don't use it every day as a Caribbean person? You're new to Caribbean cooking, you want to make Caribbean green seasoning, but not in the amounts that I've shared in the past. So this is my small batch Caribbean green seasoning. As I've explained in the past, I use olive oil as my base for my Caribbean green seasoning. It helps to preserve it. It helps to maintain the vibrancy of the color and the flavors of the herbs that I use. Speaking about herbs, everything here is from my garden except the olive oil. I have rosemary back there. I don't like rosemary in my Caribbean green seasoning. I have basil back there. I don't like basil in my Caribbean green seasoning. I have mint. I don't like it in my Caribbean green seasoning. I wish I had podina or big leaf thyme or Spanish thyme. Same thing, different names people call it. Unfortunately, I don't have it this year in my garden. I will add a leaf or two into the green seasoning. Ginger. I don't add ginger in any of my green seasoning, my Caribbean green seasoning, simply because I want this seasoning to be universal. So whether I'm cooking chicken, pork, beef, shrimp, a vegetarian dish, whatever, it has to be able to be versatile in that way. And I think by adding ginger, certain dishes you don't want ginger in. In those dishes, I love stew chicken and stew pork with a ton of ginger in there. I would grate in fresh ginger to get that pronounced flavor. The ginger in here will just get lost. Yeah? So what do I have? I have some shadow benny, what is also called culantro or chardon benny. Let me a little parlez-vous français over there. Look at that. Anyhow, if you cannot source that, get some cilantro, a couple scallions, 5 cloves of garlic. I'm going to take only the leaves off this thyme here, so maybe there's about 8 sprays of thyme, but just the leaves. I've got some parsley. These are what we call pimento or seasoning peppers, a couple green ones and a couple ripe ones. The ripe means red, it's ripe. And this is chives. That is it, along with the olive oil. If you want to add any of those other herbs that I mentioned there, do it. It's up to you if you like those flavors. I personally don't like those flavors. So I gave everything a rough chop. The tender stems of the thyme, I left it, but I took most of the leaves off that thyme. And I have here my little magic bullet. Yeah. If you don't have a magic bullet and you want to put it into your blender or food processor, yeah, it makes sense, right? But this is easier cleanup. And again, small batch Caribbean green seasoning. If you wanted to give everything here a fine chop and then mix it to the olive oil, you're good to go as well. It's totally up to you. And the order in which you put the stuff in the food processor or magic bullet or whatever device you're using, it really doesn't matter, because all we're going to do now is puree this to the sort of consistency that you like. And I like it a little bit chunky, but it's totally up to you how you like it. Now, I am using olive oil, and I explain why I like using olive oil. Traditionally, water or just plain old white vinegar will work. I would highly recommend you not use the vinegar. No. The vinegar is just going to break down everything. That is an acid, and we are trying to break down all the lovely flavors and colors and everything else that we have there. All that's left to do is to pour that olive oil down inside there. Just gonna hit that close, yeah, and this is gonna go onto the base, and I'm gonna pulse this until I get the sort of consistency that I like. I can do that off camera, but I'll show it to you after. Give that a nice little shake. Pop it open. I may have gone a little too far because I like it a bit more chunky than this. Man, does it ever smell good, boy. Pour it out so you can see exactly what we have here. And you notice the brilliant color. And I'm telling you, it's just smelling insane in here, boy. It's so good, yeah? All you would do then is put it into any sort of container. I'm just putting it into this bowl here for display purposes. If you wanted to hit this a little rinse with some more olive oil, you can do that. Sup, soldiers? Listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me. Email address down here. I mean, trying to tell people the email address, them butts will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pod. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irie. Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Classic Caribbean green seasoning in a small batch. I will scrape all of that out. You will put it into a small container into the fridge, and I kid you not, this will last a month. Now, if you make a bigger batch, there are a few options for you. You can put it into portion size or into smaller containers, put it in the fridge, and every time you need, you can, replenish. Or you can freeze it in ice trays. This is providing you make a ton of it, right? Into ice trays, create the cubes, and then you would pop the cubes out and put it into a freezer zipper bag and keep it in the freezer. Every time you're cooking and you need to use one, just go grab one of those cubes. This is the small batch version, which means it can remain, you know what I mean? It's just a small batch. You don't need to worry too much if you're new to Caribbean cooking and you want to get into things. This is your option for making green seasoning that won't waste. And now remember, not only is this good in Caribbean foods, this you add a bit more olive oil and it's a wicked marinade for grilling any sort of meats and stuff like that. Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you guys here in the kitchen with me. My small batch Caribbean green seasoning. I do hope it comes in handy for you all.